There is a part of the Quran you may have read hundreds of times, yet never truly stopped to ask, why does it begin that way? Not with a warning, not with a description of paradise, not even with a call to worship. Just two letters, Ya, Sin. Two separate sounds, not a sentence, not a clear meaning, and no complete explanation has ever been given to humanity for more than 14 centuries. The greatest scholars have reflected on it. The sharpest minds have tried to reach its deepest layer of meaning. But the deeper they went, the more they realized a strange truth. This is not something to be understood in the ordinary way. It is like a door that does not open through knowledge, but through silence. Think carefully about that. In a book where every word carries meaning, every word has purpose, every word is chosen with absolute precision, why would it begin with something human beings cannot fully decode? If you read it too quickly, you will pass over it. If you read it out of habit, you will not notice. But if you truly stop, you will feel that something is different, as if those letters themselves are telling you, stop. Do not keep reading if your mind is still full of noise. Do not step in if you are not ready to listen. Because before a message can reach the heart, that heart has to become still. This is what most people never realize. We think we need to understand before we believe, but sometimes you have to stop first, and only then can you understand. Ye, sin, not an explanation, but an interruption. A moment that forces you out of your rush, out of scattered thoughts, out of the noise of the world, and into another kind of space. A space where you are no longer the one reading, but the one listening. And at that point, everything begins to change. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained, where we do not just retell stories. We dig into truths that can change the way you see the world and the way you see yourself. If you have ever read this surah and felt nothing unusual, if you have ever heard it recited in some of the most important moments of life, when someone was about to leave this world, when a family was sitting in silence, when the darkness of night settled in, but never truly understood why, then this video is for you. And if you want to explore layers of meaning that very few people ever stop to think about, subscribe to the channel right now. Your support is what gives us the strength to keep bringing you deeper, stronger, and more honest content in the videos ahead. Now let us return to those two letters, Ya, Sin. Some say it is a call, some say it is one of the hidden names. Some believe its full meaning will only be unveiled on the day of judgment. But maybe the most important thing is not what it means, but what it does to you. It slows you down. It reminds you that not everything lies within the reach of human intellect. It tells you that some truths can only be felt, not fully analyzed. And in a world where human beings believe they can explain everything, control everything, understand everything, beginning with a mystery is a deliberate disruption. It breaks the illusion that you are the center. It breaks the habit of reading without reflection. It breaks the shell of a heart that has grown too used to hearing without truly listening. Because what comes after it is not an ordinary passage. It is a message. A message that may force you to look at yourself again. A message that may make you realize there are things you have missed, even though they were always right in front of you. And if you do not stop at those opening letters, you will keep reading, keep listening, keep living, without ever truly touching what this surah is trying to awaken inside you. Yeah, sin. Not an introduction, but the first warning. When people say this surah is the heart of the Quran, most people hear it and move on. Because we have grown used to beautiful titles that feel empty. We think it is just a noble phrase, the way people call something precious, sacred, or exalted. But if you stop for a moment and really think, you begin to see something very different. The heart is not a symbol. The heart is the one thing that, if it stops beating, everything else stops with it. You can lose many things in the body and still live. You can lose some strength, some ability, some awareness. But if the heart stops, everything ends immediately. No organ can replace it. No system can keep functioning without it. So what does it mean when a surah is called the heart? It means not only that its content matters, it means the entire spiritual life of the reader depends on how deeply they connect with it. This is not a long surah. It does not contain stories stretched across many chapters. It does not lay out detailed legal rulings, and it does not present regulations for every part of life. But what is striking is that within that conciseness, it carries the entire central axis of faith, not in the way you memorize information, but in the way you feel it. The three great foundations mentioned in it do not stand apart like dry concepts. They flow into one another, soak into one another, and become one continuous current. You are not only told that Allah is the one, you are drawn into a space where everything around you makes denial impossible. You are not only told that messengers were sent, you are shown how people responded to them, how they were rejected, mocked, pushed to the edges of society, and how truth remained standing through all of it. You are not only reminded of resurrection, you are guided to a point where denying it starts to feel irrational. This is what very few people notice. This surah does not try to persuade you through debate. It does not place you inside a logical argument so you can weigh both sides. It does not hand you a list of proofs to examine. It does something far deeper. It changes your state. Just as the heart does not explain to the body why it needs blood, it simply pumps the blood and life happens. This surah works the same way. It does not require you to understand every verse immediately, but if you truly let it pass through you, you will sense that something inside is shifting, a feeling you cannot quite name, a clarity you cannot fully explain through logic. That is why, across centuries, people who did not understand Arabic, who did not know grammar, who could not analyze its structure, still wept when they heard this surah recited, not because they understood, but because they felt. And that is exactly what the heart does. The heart does not analyze. The heart does not argue. The heart recognizes. When you stand before something truly real, you do not need proof. You only need enough stillness to recognize it. But this is also where the problem begins. Because if the heart is the center, then when it becomes misaligned, everything else follows. You can read the same verse, hear the same surah, stand in the same room, and have an experience completely different from the person beside you. Not because the content changed, but because your heart is no longer in a condition to receive it. This is a difficult truth. Many people think they do not feel anything because they have not studied enough, understood enough, researched enough. But sometimes the problem is not that you lack knowledge. It is that your heart has grown too used to no longer responding. You have heard too much without truly listening. You have seen too much without truly looking. You have lived too long in a state where everything became normal, until you no longer recognize what is truly important. And when that happens, you may still read this surah, but it is no longer the heart for you. It becomes sound, it becomes routine, it becomes part of a ritual, not a current of life. That is why understanding this surah does not begin with learning more information. It begins with asking yourself, is my heart still alive? Because if the heart is still alive, even the lightest touch can awaken everything. But if the heart has gone silent, then even if truth stands right in front of you, you will walk past it. Without ever knowing, no one wakes up one morning and suddenly realizes that the heart has closed. There is no dramatic moment, no warning sound, no clear line where you can say, from here on, I stopped feeling the truth. Everything happens in a way so quiet it is frightening. It starts with very small things. One time you hear a reminder and choose to ignore it. One time you see a sign and tell yourself it does not matter. One time you know what is right, but delay it, rationalize it, and then forget it. Nothing grand, nothing dramatic, just small choices, repeated, seemingly harmless. But those are the very things doing something you cannot see. They are changing the way your heart responds to truth. At first, you still feel uneasy when you do wrong. You still feel a little discomfort, a little tension, a sense that something is off. But if you keep ignoring that feeling, it begins to weaken, and eventually it disappears. Not because wrong has become right, but because you have lost the ability to feel that it is wrong. This is exactly where this surah speaks with a directness many people do not want to face. Not everyone disbelieves in the same way. Some people have never known the truth. Some are searching and have not yet found it. But some people have seen, heard, understood, and then turned away. And it is within that last group that the heart begins to be sealed. Not because of a decision imposed from outside, but because of their own repeated choices. Imagine the heart like a mirror. Every time you reject truth, a thin layer of dust settles over it. The first time, you can still see clearly. The second time, the image becomes dimmer. The third time, you have to strain to see. And if you keep going, eventually you stand in front of the mirror and see nothing at all. At that point, the problem is not that the light disappeared. It is that the surface meant to reflect it can no longer reflect anything. And that is the most dangerous point, because when you still feel that something is wrong, you still have a chance to return. When you still feel discomfort, you can still change. But when you feel nothing anymore, you will start believing everything is fine. You will keep living, keep acting, keep making decisions, without realizing that the system inside you has stopped working. That is why some people can stand before the strongest reminders and still remain unmoved. They hear, but do not really hear. They see, but do not really see. Not because the message is weak, but because the door inside them is no longer open. And what is even more frightening is this: they do not know it. They still think they are in control. They still believe they are choosing. They still feel that if they wanted, they could change at any time. But the truth is, every time they delay, every time they ignore, every time they choose ease over truth, they make returning a little harder. Not because the door is locked from the outside, but because they are building a wall from the inside. This surah does not present that as theory. It presents it as reality. A reality that, if you do not recognize it in time, you will keep slipping without ever feeling that you are slipping. You will keep hearing reminders, but they will no longer touch you. You will keep reading words, but they will no longer enter you. You will keep living in a world full of signs, but everything will go silent. And then the problem will no longer be that you lack evidence. It will be that you have lost the ability to recognize evidence. This is the moment many people think they are most free, when in truth they are most confined. Because real freedom is not being able to do whatever you want. It is still having the ability to recognize what is right. Once that ability disappears, you may still choose, but you no longer know what you are choosing. And that is exactly what this surah warns about, not gently, but with a stripped-down truth. The greatest danger is not that you reject truth once. It is that you do it often enough, until your heart learns how to stay silent forever. But even in that silence, there is still a spark. Because as long as the heart is not completely dead, as long as there is still one moment when you stop and ask yourself, the door has not closed all the way. The question is, do you realize you are standing in front of that door or not? In a city where the voice of truth had become strange, where the crowd had grown more comfortable mocking than listening, where those carrying the message were treated like troublemakers, there was one man who did not choose to remain still. He was not a scholar, not a man of authority. He held no status, no influence, nothing that would make others pay attention. If he had stayed silent, no one would have asked. If he had turned away, no one would have blamed him. But he ran, not away from danger, straight into it. Imagine that moment, a crowd full of tension, accusations flying, eyes filled with contempt, emotions rising, and at the center of it all were people being resisted, threatened, opposed, simply because they were speaking a truth the crowd did not want to hear. And from a distance, a man began to run. He had no time to calculate. He did not stop to weigh the consequences. He did not ask whether he himself would be harmed, because there are moments in life when there is no longer time to think too much. You can only choose, step forward, or stay silent. He chose to step forward. When he arrived, he did not bring a speech. No complex arguments, no philosophy, no strategy to win over the crowd. He said only one thing, so simple that anyone could understand it. Why should I not worship the one who created me? It was not a question for debate. It was a question that cuts directly into the core of what it means to be human. No proof needed, no defense needed. If you are honest enough with yourself, you cannot escape it. He did not say, "You are wrong." He did not attack them. He did not belittle them. He did not confront them in the way the crowd expected. He simply brought them back to something they had always known and forgotten, that they were created, that they do not sustain themselves, that they have an origin, and they will have a return. But truth, when spoken in front of a crowd that does not want to hear it, is never welcomed. We are not given the details of what happened next. There is no graphic description, no violent image, no long explanation. Only a sudden shift, so fast that it makes the reader stop. One moment he is standing among people, the next moment he is told, "Enter paradise." There is no space in between, no narration of death, no description of pain, as if everything happened in a single beat. And maybe that is exactly what gives this story so much power, because sometimes the distance between truth and reward is not as long as we imagine. But what truly makes a person stop is not that he was admitted into paradise. It is what he says next. He does not talk about his joy. He does not talk about reward. He does not talk about justice. There is no trace of bitterness, no trace of satisfaction that he was proven right. He says, "If only my people knew." Pause there. These are the people who rejected him, the people who refused to listen, the people who may well have been the reason he left this world. And in the very moment he is given the greatest reward, the only thing he is thinking about is still them, not so they can regret it, not so they can suffer, but so they can be saved. That is not a natural human reaction. When people are hurt, they often want revenge. When they are rejected, they often want to turn away. When they are treated unjustly, they often want to prove themselves right. But real faith does something entirely different. It expands the heart until, even when you are treated in the worst way, you still want the best for others. This is the point where the story rises beyond history. It is not just an event that happened. It is a mirror holding up a question very few people dare ask themselves. If you were in that place, would you run forward or remain standing still? If you knew that speaking the truth might cost you everything, would you still speak or stay silent? And if you had spoken and been rejected and been hurt, what would remain inside you? Bitterness or mercy? Because in the end, this story is not about an unnamed man. It is about a choice every person at some point in life will have to face, between protecting yourself and standing with the truth, between staying silent to remain safe and speaking even if it costs you. And what makes this story so haunting is not the ending. It is the truth that you do not know when it will be your turn to make that choice. After everything that has happened, after the story of one man who ran toward the truth, after the warnings about a heart that can seal itself, this surah does not end with emotion. It brings you back to something you cannot escape. Reality. Not the reality you are used to seeing with your eyes, but the reality operating around you every day, that you have never truly read. You step outside, see the earth, and assume it has always been this way. You pass fields, gardens, green land, and call it normal. But there was once a time when all of it was completely dead, dry, silent, without a trace of life. Then rain comes. No one commands each drop to fall in its exact place. No one directs every seed to wake up. Yet from what looked completely finished, life rises again. And you have seen that happen hundreds of times in your life. But you never stop to ask, if the earth can die and then live again, why do human beings think they are the one exception? You go out to the sea, look at the waves, at the endless stretch of water. You board a ship, cross the ocean, and assume everything is just functioning normally. But you forget that with one small change, everything can become chaos. Nothing in nature runs independently. Nothing is natural in the way you imagine. Everything is being held in its exact place, moment by moment. The sun does not come a little closer, nor drift a little away. The moon does not miss its orbit. Night does not swallow day. Day does not break the order of night. Everything moves, but never loses control. You look up at the sky, and you call that law. But this surah calls it a sign of an order so precise it cannot be random, a sign of a power that not only created, but continues to sustain control and direct everything. And if all of that is unfolding right in front of you, then there is one question you cannot avoid forever. Why do you believe your life is the only thing with no purpose? There is an argument in this surah so simple that it can make people uncomfortable. There was once a time when you did not exist. No shape, no thoughts, no memories, no awareness. Then you appeared, not from something complete, but from something almost insignificant. And from that, you became a human being who can think, argue, deny, and question. If that already happened once, then what makes you think it cannot happen a second time? This is not some new miracle. It is simply the repetition of a miracle you already are living proof of. But maybe what frightens people most is not being created again. It is having to face what they did the first time. Because if there is a day when everything is brought back, then there is a day when everything is brought out. A day with no room left to hide, no time left to delay, no chance left to go back and fix anything. This surah describes that moment not as destruction, but as awakening. As if you had only been asleep, you open your eyes and realize everything has changed. The old world is gone. The familiar rhythm is gone. The things you once clung to are gone. All that remains is one truth that you heard many times, but never really believed. And the first thing you say is not an explanation. It is a panicked question. What has raised us up from where we lay? The answer was always there, but you did not listen. And at that point, understanding no longer helps, because understanding is not what saves you. What saves you is what you did before understanding came too late. This surah does not end with a story. It ends with a truth you cannot change. Everything you see, everything you experience, everything you think you control, does not belong to you. All of it is in the hand of the one who created it. Not only what you can see, but also what you cannot see. Not only what you understand, but also what you have never even noticed. And in the end, whether you accept it or not, you will still return, not as a choice, but as a destination already written for you before you even existed. The question was never whether you will return. The question is, when you return, what will you be carrying with you? The deepest lesson is not that you must understand everything. It is that you must keep your heart alive, still feeling, still trembling when it stands before the truth. Because when the heart is alive, even the slightest reminder can change the direction of your whole life. But when the heart has gone silent, even the clearest truths become meaningless. Applying this to life does not begin with major changes. It begins with very small moments. When you hear something true, do not rush to brush it aside. When you feel even a little discomfort in your conscience, do not try to silence it. When you realize you are drifting, do not delay turning back, because those small moments are exactly where the heart is either preserved or slowly lost. Train yourself to pause in the middle of a busy life. Give yourself real silence, not to finish reading, not to hear enough words, but to truly face what you are hearing, because sometimes what you need is not more knowledge, but a heart quiet enough to understand what you have known all along. If you want to keep exploring stories, lessons, and profound truths from the Quran and an Islamic history in a way that touches the heart, join the Prophetic History Explained community. This is where we reflect together, dig deeper together, and recover the values the modern world makes us forget so easily. And if you found value in this content, subscribe to support the channel. Your support is exactly what keeps us going and helps us create videos that are more meaningful and more profound in the days ahead.